Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is your host, Alicia Debrell from Insight Media. Today's guest is certified professional speaker, corporate trainer, certified coach, and author, Michelle L Steffes. She empowers individuals and teams by utilizing psychological insights and cognitive methods to accelerate growth, increase performance, alter physiology, and transform self-defeating mindsets. Michelle has empowered people and teams for over 2 decades with hundreds of presentations and workshops as a leader, director, team builder, and business builder. Her new book, called Your Journey to Greatness Through Routine, is set to release in the fall of this year, 2018. Educational background includes leadership and business management, along with 5 years of study in cognitive behavior, brain science, and human physiology. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Michelle L Steffes to the show. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
You've done so much, and you've got so much experience behind you. So, I want to kind of jump into what made you want to become, a speaker, a trainer, and a coach.
Well, 25 years of leadership has kind of led me to believe that there are 2 things about people. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of teams, a lot of leaders, and a lot of individuals. But number one, everyone possesses greatness within them. They just need someone to help them pull out their best potential. And number 2, I have an absolute love and compassion to see people win, which led me to founding Ipd Consulting, and that stands for Integrity, People, and Vision.
Nice. So how do you help executives and business owners breed a culture that brings productivity and growth?
I want to start with a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, which happens to be my favorite quote and one to live by as well as run my business by. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It really begins with leadership and understanding that there has to be compassion and encouragement in addition to boundaries and leadership. And ultimately, leadership is a sense of compassion if you're doing it correctly. And with our up and growing, a new working world of millennials, which by 2025 will be 75% of the working force, it's even more important to have that mindset because millennials were raised in a different generation with different qualities and values of their lives growing up, and they learn different ways to work and to survive than we did in earlier generations. So that's key. But also, another key is having a clear sense of vision and core values. So when you understand what your vision and core values are and what they are for your organization, then you're able to align all of your decisions to that, making things move in the right direction. John Maxwell stated, you train people what you know, but you produce who you are. That's another big part of this. So understanding your vision and core values helps you to go in that direction, but also imparting that vision and core values to your team. So there are multitudes of ways to do that. And first of all, with engagement and solutions. And I happen to love and admire Laszlo Bock. He is, or was, the Senior Vice President of People Operations for Google and did so for about a decade. And under his guidance, Google actually was named the best company to work for more than 30 times around the world and received over 100 rewards as an employer of choice. Now, Laszlo had a couple of different policies that he put in place that I use as well, as much as I'm able to. First, 6-month surveys, and what he's looking for is a lot of different data and credentials to make determinations on how to move forward and what's going right and what's going wrong. But one of the things is lowest performing leaders. And what Laszlo does that's very different from the corporate world is instead of just, kicking them to the side, he would instead adopt mentors or coaches or trainers to come alongside of them and help them to excel. And the statistics have proven time and again, after doing this for years, that the leaders increase their performance by 75%. That's pretty incredible, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that Laszlo does that I teach leaders, he calls it the 20% time policy. And what he does is he gives his team 20% of their time each week to spend on projects, ideas, concepts that inspire and motivate them. So in other words, they get to use their passion, their ideas, and really he's pulling from them their very best. So not only are they looking forward to the day they get to work on those things and contribute back to the success of Google or the organization, but it also raises morale exponentially. So what I tell leaders is if you allow people to be engaged in the solutions, if you let them share the ideas and the concepts that they have the background to share, their expertise, their experience, you'll not only pull out the best of them, but then you can reap the rewards of all of those ideas. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I like that because you never know where that really, really good idea could be coming from. If you don't ask or let them be involved, you'd never find out about it. And that helps both the company and the employee.
Absolutely. That's the truth. And many leaders are missing out on that incredible privilege because they don't have policies or ways to engage employees. So that's the biggest one. But also making sure that you are weaving through the goal, the vision, and the core values with policies, programs, initiatives, training, even wall displays. I've seen a lot of organizations where they'll have wall displays of some of the employees that have accomplished something that is aligning with the vision or core values and taking a picture of them with a specific, recommendation or rather recognition for what they've accomplished. But even putting maybe some quotes or some fun ideas on the walls to remind people of what the vision and core values are. And then including, even employee challenges and competitions in that. So there's one more crucial piece to this, and that's personal and professional development. Because as I said at the beginning with John Maxwell, you train people what you know, but you produce who you are. So being a good leader or helping leaders to lead better requires both formal and personal education. So emotional intelligence, true leadership is something that I teach a lot of. Consistent training. These are all important components to helping them to become better leaders. One of the programs that I founded is the Ipd Group Coaching. This can be done in person or virtual. I have a lot of large organizations involved in this, especially those that have a lot of departments or a lot of separate entities where they need to come together and train their leaders. This consists of training on 12 different topics, all personal and professional, everything from emotional intelligence to time management to learning how to build a legacy mindset. And each one has not only training, but collaborative solution finding activities and mastermind discussions.
Nice. Okay, so tell me this. I want to talk about, because I've done a little research on you, so I know you deal with brain training techniques and you use them in your coaching. Why do you think these techniques work and what are they exactly?
Well, brain training is really at the hub of ultimate change or transformation, whether we're talking about a leader, an individual, or an organization as a whole, because it's perceptions that always get us into trouble. So there are really 5 main components, and I'm hoping we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more in depth about them later on. But the 5 major ones are vision, which we talked about already, which determines focus, specific goals, so having goals actually written out with plans of action of how to execute those goals and then how you're going to get educated in those areas to grow. Routine development training, which is something that I found it is very unique in that what we do is we teach people to align their lifestyle and everything that they're doing and thinking and working on with their goal or their vision. So in other words, from the time they open their eyes to the time they lay their head down at the pillow at night, they need to be listening to the right things, working on education in the areas that they need to grow, and really changing the way that they perceive life as a whole and run their lives. It sounds pretty complicated, but it really isn't. It's just a matter of exchanging. So say, for example, if you spend a lot of time on social media or Facebook or you watch your favorite TV programs, instead exchange that for maybe listening to a podcast or an audio book or something that's going to push you forward. Matter of fact, a couple of quick statistics for you on that level. If you drive only 12,000 miles a year and you traded it, say in what you're normally listening to, you trade it in for something educational, in 3 years, just driving 12,000 miles is equivalent to a 2-year college education. So that's just one example.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Another one would be if you read just 10 minutes a day. That's it. 10 minutes a day. You can do that, while you're eating your lunch or while you're eating supper, or you can do that before you go to bed. And you do that every day for a total of a year. That's equivalent to 20 200-page books. Most people don't even read one book in a year.
When you break it down, that's simple. It makes a difference.
Yes, it does. So everything that you're doing with your life is either pushing you forward towards your destiny or it's pulling you away, ultimately. So then we talk about altering human physiology, which happens through the brain training process, changing mindsets and removing success inhibitors and replacing them with new programs in the mind. Some of the things that I do to create that through the brain training is self-directed neuroplasticity. Now, that sounds like a big term. I'm sure you've probably heard of neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where you create new neural pathways. So basically, you have 100 billion neurons in your brain, and you've had them since you were born, and you've been creating neural pathways ever since. From the people that you're surrounded by to the influences in your life, skills you've learned, education, peer pressure, all sorts of even calamities that happen in your life is affecting you, and you're growing neural pathways at every single change and every single exposure in your life. And as you're growing these new neural pathways, what's happening is you're growing what's called a dendrite. It's kind of a protein mass, pinkish brown in color. It looks a little bit like a tree. And it continues to grow out from your neuron, and as you continue to think it, for a course of anywhere from 18 to 63 days, you can grow a neural network, which is several synaptic connections from all those thinking processes. And the neural networks that you have could be negative and positive, a mixture of both. We usually have both in our brain. But the good news is you can actually, there's 400 billion actions per second of electricity going through your brain, and you can redirect that electricity from one part of your brain to another by changing your thinking. So let me put it to you this way. Let's say you go to Europe and you've got to learn how to drive on the other side of the road. Here in the West, where we're from, we drive on the right. So if you go to Europe, you have to drive on the left. Well, at first it feels really awkward and crazy, right?
Yeah, no, I did. I used to live in Australia, so I experienced that firsthand.
There you go.
I actually backed into a pole looking in the wrong direction.
Oh, no. Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes, and it just feels really crazy for about the first 3 weeks, roughly, all right? By then, you have grown enough new neural networks, and you sense the electricity in another direction in your brain, and neural pruning happens, too. So that means that the old thinking that you had before, because the electricity is not flowing to it anymore, the neural pathways or neural networks actually denature, okay? Then when you come back to America, you've got to go through the same process all over again.
Yes.
So ultimately, what you're doing is you're constantly growing and pruning. Hebb's law says neurons that fire together wire together. So that's really kind of the best way to put it.
I like it.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I like how you're simplifying things and talking in layman terms.
One more thing I want to share with you on that end. We have about 60,000 thoughts a day. So kind of as a way of, I guess, diagnosing whether or not you have a lot of neural networks that are negative versus positive.
I'm sorry, how many thoughts did you say?
60,000 thoughts a day. Crazy, huh?
Wow.
I know.
I'm like, I think that much.
That's a lot. So if you could say you had a scale in front of you that you could weigh the thoughts out on, when you lay your thoughts on that scale for the day, would they tip more to the negative or the positive? Because if they're tipping more to the negative, chances are you have more negative neural networks than you have positive. So it means that you need to work on it. Basically. But your neural networks are ultimately your subconscious. And actually, your subconscious is 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Well, you are on autopilot 90% of the time with your subconscious. And your conscious mind is basically your will or your mind. That operates at about 2,000 actions per second versus the 400 billion actions per second from your subconscious. But there is enough power there to actually impress upon your subconscious and bring about change if you will choose to live and react intentionally versus just reactively. And 85% of the population is living reactively. If you just look around, you can see it. It's really an incredible concept when you think about it that way. So your subconscious is so important. It's so important to understand this. But see, your imagination, your brain does not know the difference between an imagined event or a real event. Another quick example, Alicia, if I may, is in horror movies, you break out into a sweat. You're clutching the chair, maybe the seat next to you. Your eyes are bulging. Your vital signs are elevated. And in a love story, you would have, reactions to it too. I know I cry during love stories. See, you're not really actually in the movie, but you're reacting to it because your subconscious or your neural networks do not know the difference between imaginary reality. So the point is that you have the power to change or transform your mind and your thoughts and thinking simply by changing how you basically program yourself on a day-to-day.
Okay. There's so many numbers that in what you said and everything you just said in the last few minutes here that I had no idea. I had no idea that, your subconscious was that much more powerful than your conscious mind. That's insane.
It is.
So if you had something that was maybe suffering from burnout, would you use that brain training for that, or would a different technique be more of help?
Well, it's a very good question. And there are a lot of people suffering from burnout today, isn't there?
Yes, I used to be one of them.
Oh, dear. Well, I think we've all been there maybe once, at least, if maybe not more. But burnout, is really on the rise, as well as depression, and suicide rates are going up. There's really a big problem out there. But in answer to your question, yes and no. Brain training is absolutely required, and it must be the foundation for physiological change. So basically, you have to understand how your physiology works with your brain in order to understand, how we would treat somebody that's in a burnout situation. So I'll share that with you, but I want to share a very quick testimonial first. So basically, I had a client, name is we'll just call her Kathy, okay? And Kathy came to me after being in clinical depression for over a decade. And she had been to, therapy, counseling, all these things. She even had antidepressants involved with it. And she tried everything. So she was very reluctant for trying to coach, but since she had tried everything else, she went ahead and went through with it. Well, I have a program called the 5 and 5 Performance Coaching Program. And this program is designed for accelerated growth based on the brain training. So after going through that, she not only noticed an incredible change in how she kept telling me she's smiling more for no reason. People at work began to comment on it. Her family even called me after the 5 and 5 program and asked if they could invest in another 6 months because they saw such a change in her. In fact, her mom said, "Thank you for giving me my daughter back."
Aww.
There's a lot to this. When you start to think about how much your thinking or your brain, your processing is affecting your physiology, then the solution starts to become more clear. So everybody's heard of the flight or fight response, right?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
usually more probably on the fight.
Okay. Well, that's when that happens, there's a release of adrenaline and cortisol. I don't know if you've heard of those terms before, but adrenaline is that major rush that we get. That makes us feel like we have a superpower. It's what makes people want to jump off of bridges on bungee cords and out of airplanes. They just like that rush that they get. But the thing is that cortisol always comes with that. So adrenaline is what can make us do incredible things, but the cortisol actually paralyzes the frontal cortex of your brain. Now, there's a reason for that. Because most of the time when you go into fight or flight, it's because you're in some kind of threat or danger. So let's just use the example of a mom that she just got in a car wreck. She notices her child is caught under the car or trapped under the car. She just, without even thinking, she just runs over. She picks up the car and pulls the child out. And so people that, the EMS comes on the scene and they say, "How in the world did you do that?" And she says, "I don't know." Well, the reason is because the adrenaline gave her the superpower to do it, and the cortisol paralyzed her frontal cortex, so she didn't reason herself out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
But when we remain in fear or anxiety, what we do is we bring on what's called chronic stress. I'm sure you've heard of that before, right?
Yes.
Okay. So chronic stress can cause many things, like reduced attention, where you got to read something 4 or 5, 6 times. It's still not penetrating. You may have a lower sense of perception, emotional distress, so your emotions are all over the board, poor nutrition, you're not sleeping at night, and actually, clinically, they have proven that cortisol causes insomnia. So that's a good tip for a lot of people right there.
I was going to say, I knew there was something to blame.
Yeah, definitely. When you're in long-term chronic stress, it begins to shrink the hippocampus, which is the memory center of your brain. So now you start to really struggle remembering even simple things. And then it affects the amygdala, which is the emotional center. And you may have heard the term amygdala hijack.
No, I haven't. So
you haven't? Okay.
For that.
That is when it has gotten so far that you now don't have any control over your emotional center or your amygdala. And now you are either in fits of rage, or you're crying in the corner, or you just can't seem to figure out heads or tails of anything you're feeling anymore. Nothing makes sense. That's the amygdala hijack. So
I have seen people there.
yeah, yes. Unfortunately, that has become even more common today than it used to be. That's a scary thing. But that's from living reactively, again, instead of intentionally. So I teach clients how to take control. I teach leaders how to take control, to live intentionally on a consistent basis. Understand what you can control versus you can't. So really begin to sift it out and think about it. Okay, so you can control your circumstances, and well, you're not your circumstances, but you can control yourself and how you react to your circumstances, but you can't necessarily control the circumstances around you. The common denominator is always you. And the question is, will you reign or just maintain? That's the bottom line. Investing in who you are will yield massive improvement in every area of your life and your career. And there are 6 major areas in your life that we could consider. So marriage and family, friendships, career, fitness, nutrition, spirituality. Those are the 6. If you spend all your time trying to balance those and make everything happen the way it's supposed to, and then when it doesn't, you get stressed out because you're just trying to fix everything and everybody. Instead, if you just work on you, you answer me. Will that change everything around? Will it change those 6 areas? If you work on you and you become a better person, would it change everything around you?
Well, yeah, because it would feed into everything around me.
Absolutely.
It all starts with me.
Absolutely. You're going to be less reactive. You're going to be more resilient. You're going to act emotionally intelligent. But most people skip the you and expect success just by maintaining the other 6. And the result is frustration and burnout. So
Makes sense.
To wrap that up, they need to learn to manage their time, schedule and prioritize, manage stress, and understand that when you meditate on fear, bad feelings, and experiences, in days, it becomes a mood. And people start to say, are you okay? Something wrong with you? And then in months, it becomes a temperament. And people say, you've been in a funk for a little while. What's going on with you? Do you need some help? What can I do? And then in years, it becomes a personality trait. And people start to say, she's always been that way. Just blow her off. She's just that kind of person. Or he's just not an empowerer of people. He just likes to get down on people. Just ignore him. And that's not what we want. See, that's what causes us to end up in the situations that we end up in.
So tell me this, where does emotional intelligence for a greater influence come into play?
Well, that's another very, very good question. And I love emotional intelligence. I teach it often to leaders as well as teams. But statistics tell us that in Forbes, if you are higher in EQ, which is emotional quotient, that's a test that you can take on emotional intelligence, then you actually can earn as much as $29,000 more per year than your counterparts.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a piece of influence right there. And then
you are filled with fun facts.
And then SEA studied 1,170 people, and they put all of their statistics on a chart for all 1,170, and they found out that the higher the emotional quotient, the higher the performance, and that's at every level. So it's pretty influential at many different areas. And I'd like to give you the definition of emotional intelligence: the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. That's a mouthful, right?
Yep.
There are 5 elements, basic elements to emotional intelligence. So self-awareness, self-control, motivation, empathy, and social skills. The benefits of honing in on these 5 and working on them diligently and practicing all of the attributes of an emotionally intelligent person are it'll reduce your stress, it'll moderate conflict in your life, increase workplace productivity. So as a leader, this is absolutely key, because as you know, the more that you can learn to do these things, the more that you can pass them on to your team. It will promote understanding your relationships, heighten self-awareness so that you don't react so quickly, and it'll foster stability and continuity, giving you a strong state of mind and a stable way of approaching every single challenge that comes to you with a creative mindset. Does that sound worth it?
Yeah, definitely. Emotional intelligence, I think, plays a huge role.
There are a lot of emotional intelligence materials out there. I know there's several books on emotional intelligence. I also have a quiz online that I offer to clients, especially companies or corporations, having their teams or their leaders take it in advance so they can kind of see where they're at on the scale. So it's a good idea to, if you've never done an emotional intelligence test, to do one just to see where you land, because there's a lot more to it than what most people realize. In fact, when they hear that word emotional or those words emotional intelligence, they always think, well, I'm pretty good with people. I'm nice to people. It's more than that. That's only half of it. The other half of it is, how do you think of yourself? How do you treat yourself? How do you value yourself? And how do you handle yourself emotionally? So there's really a lot to it that people don't take into account. Now, some of the symptoms of people that have lower emotional intelligence, just to kind of give you an eye for that, would be self-critical, entitled, a victim mentality, pessimistic, someone who overgeneralizes or overthinks, poor time management habits, fear and doubts constantly. Those are all symptoms of somebody that would be of lower emotional intelligence. Now, the effects of that, and we're going to go back to now understanding the physiology of the stress, are things like brain fog, headaches, hypertension, digestive disorders, fatigue, temperamental, critical, argumentative. So you see how they are all tied together? The brain training, the emotional intelligence, the physiology, this is all part of the package. You can't separate it. Is that making sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And one feeds into the other. So it totally makes sense. Tell me this, when you help your clients to basically make sure they have the right mindset, how important is that in your practice? Is that like the main priority? Or do you go after the emotional intelligence and brain training first?
Well, they kind of, again, they all fit together. If you are going to have the right mindset, then you need to be able to train your brain to get there, first of all, which then alters your physiology. And then by altering your physiology, then you're able to function with a steady state of mind and be able to think creatively, visionary, and be able to focus on the things that matter and your priorities. Anthony Robbins stated, all personal breakthroughs begin with a change in beliefs. So there it is in a nutshell, really. Vision determines your focus. And here again with Tony Robbins, he said, where your energy flows, your focus goes. I love that one. Specific goals help you to have that quote unquote business plan for your life, your career, your leadership, your team in place. It's amazing to me how many people, they realize how important it is to have a business plan to get a loan from a bank, but they don't realize how important it is they have a business plan for their lives, their careers, their future, their teams. You've got to have the same kind of thinking. And then the routine development training I mentioned to you. So, and the thing is a lot of people might think that interferes with their schedules, but in fact it doesn't. People pay big bucks to have somebody come in and say, rearrange a workstation for more efficiency. Well, in a sense, that's what I do, is I come in to leaders, to teams, to individuals, and I help them to kind of rearrange their workstation. So we might look at your life, Alicia, and say, okay, so what time do you get up in the morning? Do you exercise? What do you do when you're getting ready? Are you thinking bad thoughts? How do we change that? What kind of tools can I give you to help you to think towards your vision and help you to really begin to grasp what it is that you're capable of doing and pull out your best potential? What kind of things are you doing when you get home? Are you spending time on social media? You parked in front of the TV set, just, frittering away your time? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. So the thing is, we have to figure out how to set up that 24 hours so it is a success routine. And that's really what I'm writing a book on. Will be released this fall. So it's really a fascinating thing when you start to think about it. And people, when they begin to work on this, they realize it doesn't take as much time as they think. And in fact, it's all about exchanges. And then, of course, we end up rewiring their brain, changing perceptions through their eyes. And some of the tools I offer, just as a reference, are a vision mapping tool, a targeted training with 5 specific goals. These all help them stay on track. A PTT, I call it, which is it's part of the routine development training, but it's called a performance transformation tool, and that helps them to stay accountable. Growth commitments, list making, prioritizing, and affirmations, which most people don't do it the correct way. Exercise, which did you know that when you exercise, your pituitary gland floods your body with endorphins, which are 200 times more powerful than morphine. It's pretty fascinating when you start to learn all this and you understand how it's just something small. In fact, if you just exercise 20 to 30 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week, It will give you more brain clarity, more creativity, more productivity. You'll have more energy, more health. I can tell in the days that I do versus the days that I don't. So it's just phenomenal, the difference we can make just by changing some of the things we're doing and altering our schedule.
You're helping basically your clients with daily practices and habits, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that plays a big role in what you do.
Yes, and it affects them in their leadership, their teams and team management, their organizations, and really their life as a whole.
Okay. So I know you use law of attraction in your coaching practice. How do you put that into motion, and what are the results a client should, expect from that by using the methods from law of attraction?
Okay. Well, let's start out with the quote by Earl Nightingale. The ground will yield whatever we plant. So when it comes to law of attraction and putting that into motion, we need to understand that whatever we're putting into ourselves on a day-to-day is bringing forth some kind of fruit. So say, for example, if you're a leader, okay, say you lead an organization that has 400 employees and you have several departments to manage. If you get up in the morning and you don't exercise and you're feeling unhealthy, all right, and you're already feeling lethargic before you can get out the door, you're stressed. As soon as you pull into the parking lot, automatically now you're already shutting down the frontal cortex of your brain. So now you're not going to be able to think clearly when you walk in the door. And then you're going to emit an energy, which I'd like to talk about yet, so I hope we get a chance to do that, that's going to be very negative. And it's going to start to affect the entire team. So just by common sense, even without using the words law of attraction, which kind of intimidates some people, we understand the concept of it. So when we work to change our perceptions, it changes us physiologically, neurologically, socially, intellectually, which changes how others see us, ultimately changing our future and our culture. The quantum field responds not only to what we want, it responds to what we are being. That's a quote by Joe Dispenza, who also teaches a lot of neuroscience, and I follow him. Now, heart energy is well worth mentioning in this. So the Heart Math Institute, which is located in California, it's a nonprofit, and in fact, you can look them up at heartmath.org, has been studying the heart for a number of years. Now, the heart has about 40,000 neuron-like cells. In fact, these cells are actually higher in energy than that of your brain. They're saying 60 to 100 times more energy from your heart than your brain. Now, just to help you, I guess, wrap your brain around the idea of your heart having energy, they've measured it out as far as 3 to 5 feet. And this has to do with the law of attraction, so hang with me here. So now, does a dog sense fear? Answer the question.
Yes.
Yes, okay. When you're next to somebody that, say, is resenting you or angry with you, can you feel that energy without them saying a word?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And vice versa. If you feel someone has got a crush on you or is attracted to you, you can feel that too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So energy is real, but we here in the Western world don't really think of it that often as energy. Now, the Heart Math did something that's kind of fascinating. So I'm going to throw some more numbers at you here, Alicia, since you like numbers. They have measured the heart's energy by magnetometers, and they put numbers on it based on emotions. So if you're in emotions like love, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, peace, then your heart's going to measure between 500 and 600 magnetometers, which means you're very, very attractive. You are drawing people near you, not pushing them away. You become a leader that people are drawn to. They want to be around you. They want to follow you. They want to know your vision. They want to stand behind what you're doing, and they love working for you, okay, or just being near you. 200 to 350 for the emotions of acceptance, willingness, courage. Now, obviously, there's a space between the two because there's a lot of emotions that would fit between those two. 20 to 100 for emotions like fear, guilt, offense, shame, hate, bitterness. When you're down in those emotions, you actually become a repulse. I mean that in a nice way. But, truly, if you're in those emotions, nobody wants to come near you. No one wants to hear your vision or follow you. You might have the best business plan on the planet. You might have the best vision written. But if those are the emotions that you're in all the time, or at least a lot of the time, then no one's going to follow you. Nobody. So, again, back to that Theodore Roosevelt quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is where a lot of the law of attraction comes from. But the fact that your heart has energy. Everything on the planet has energy. So, in other words, the energy that you vibrate in is going to affect your surroundings. And I have a story to tell you on that. A client recently hired, actually just towards the end of last year. His name was, we'll just call him Jared. Anyway, you can find him and the other client's testimonial on the Better Business Bureau under Ipd Consulting. He was at a crossroads in his career, 26 years in law enforcement. He was basically feeling stuck, okay? And so he took the 5 and 5 performance coaching, and within days, coworkers and family began to notice positive changes, and things began to shift for him in his environment, not only for his family, but for his career. He became focused, positive, and insightful. And he had drawn up his vision, because that's one of the first things that I have clients do, whether you're an organization or a person, to become a chief of police within a year. Now, that's like running for political office, because you can't just do it where you are. You know, there's already a chief of police there, so you've got to find a whole new position somewhere else, wherever there's an opening, right? So he ended up competing against over 50 in the nation for one specific chief of police job that happened to open up while we were coaching, and it happened to be within 30 miles of his house. So I don't look at either of those as a coincidence. He was constantly visualizing, he was constantly working on himself, and favor just kept coming towards him and landing in his lap. So long story short, in a series of different events that happened for him that were absolutely remarkable, he did become chief of police in less than 5 weeks.
Wow.
So that's just one story. I could share many others.
That's impressive.
It's pretty phenomenal.
I want to talk to you about, do you just help the executives and the business owners, or do you actually help with their entire staff or their team?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, Ipd Group Coaching is a way to collaborate between departments, between entities, bringing everybody in the same room together. And with the Ipd Group Coaching, you know, as I said, it's broken out into mastermind sessions as well as training, as well as collaborative group. But I also have individual coaching packages that I put together for individuals on the team by a leader's choice or by that individual's choice.
You also said that you also had a little form or a test for them to fill out ahead of time for management. Yes. In order for the executives to kind of see where the people, you know, where the staff was actually at. Yeah. Okay. So what are maybe 1 or 2 popular misconceptions that maybe an executive or a business owner may have about hiring a coach like you?
Well, usually it's fear. Fear of the time commitment, the lifestyle change it may cause, habits that they would have to change that maybe they don't want to. Fear
that
of the
they
unknown.
Have to change too?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Fear of the unknown and fear of the investment itself. But, you know, when it comes to investment, Alicia, how could anyone argue with the fact that you are your best investment? I mean, you're stuck with you the rest of your life, right? So investing in yourself is one of the greatest investments you can make. It shouldn't even be on the list of arguments.
I agree. And if you have to invest in yourself first in order to help anybody else. So, and that actually brings me to my next question, which is, if you had like a nugget of advice to give somebody that is really struggling to get the results that they desire, what would that be?
Well, the biggest thing I can say in 2 words is be intentional. As I said, 85% of the population lives reactively, just reacting. Oh, I'm mad. Oh, I'm frustrated. Oh, that just infuriates me. Oh, that wasn't fair. Reactions aren't going to get you anywhere. You've got to be intentional. To see the changes you desire, you must invest in yourself first as a leader, an organization, a business owner, individual, whatever you are. Step out of your own skin and take a 10,000-foot view of your life, your career, your business, or your leadership. And then make a list of 10 things that you desire to accomplish in 12 months and prioritize it. And then you need to break it down, starting with number 1, to determine what you can do to control it and set up a detailed plan for change, beginning with a vision statement. If you need help, get a coach.
Makes sense. And I have one more final question, which is probably the most important one. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, maybe a business owner or executive, how would they go about doing that?
Well, there are several ways to reach me. First of all, my business line is 616-805-8059. My website is actually 2 of them you could reach, which is yournexteventspeaker.com or ipdconsulting.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Facebook Ipd Consulting, and Twitter at People Builder.
Okay. Well, Michelle, I just want to say, first of all, you're a wealth of information. You've got so much knowledge, and
Thank
the
you.
numbers that you were telling me were pretty impressive. Things I never even thought about. And I also love how you take, the brain training and all the technical stuff, and you bring it down to a level that makes it simple. And I think that should be very effective for anybody that brings you on.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for the invitation and your time, Alicia. I value it.
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to your book that's going to come out this year. The book is going to be called Your Journey to Greatness Through Routine.
Yes.
And that should be out by the end of this year. So that's going to be exciting.
Yes, I am excited as well. And I really hope it helps a lot of people.
Me too. All right, guys, you just heard from professional speaker, corporate trainer, certified coach, and author Michelle L Steffes. And this is your host, Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.